Political leaders, they should be selfless, honest, competent, eloquent, and most especially, they should know how to deliver and listen.
Students, join us in today's webinar as we discuss the importance of exercising your right to suffrage in this coming May 2022 elections.
Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar today about voters' education titled Does My Vote Really Matter? We are going to be your host. I am Martin Victoria, a second-year Bachelor of Multimedia Arts student from Malayan Colleges, Laguna.
And I am Karen Morales, a third-year Bachelor of Arts and Communication student from Malayan Colleges, Laguna, and one of the youth ambassadors for Eleksyon Boto Ko Bukas Ko.
Before we go on, may we first request everyone to have a moment of silence as we begin the program with a short prayer, to be followed by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Sikoy ko kamigimu tolangit. Sikoy ko kamigimu to aldo woy bulan. Ikaw ang nagbuhat sa kabituunan. Ikaw ang nagbuhat sa kalibutan. Manama, mawantog ka. Warag po ko ilingkoy ko. O Diyos, kahibulungan ka. Busa ikaw lang ang simbahon ko.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم آمين يا رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين اللهم اجمع شمل المسلمين والكريستيان واللومد في مدينة دباو وسلم دائما مجتمعنا هذا بالسلم والأمن والتقدم في بلدنا هذا آمين يا رب العالمين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على خير خلقه سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين يا رب العالمين.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today to praise and worship you and give you thanks for all the things you continue to provide for ourselves and our families. Father, we humbly ask for forgiveness for all the times we have offended you, when we forget to acknowledge your presence in the image of our brothers and sisters, and for moments we fail to be good stewards of the blessings you have given us. Continue to guide and protect each one of us, Lord, that we may always walk in the light of your everlasting love and mercy. Grant us, Father, with your comfort in times of distress and with your strength in times of weakness. Bestow upon us your unending grace and healing, that we may in turn become instruments of gentleness and compassion to others. We ask all this in the name of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, with the prayer and the intercession of our Blessed Mother. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
We would like to welcome you all once again to today's Voters Education webinar entitled, Does My Vote Really Matter? And Karen, since you've mentioned a while ago ang election, gusto ko lang din ipaalam sa ating mga Facebook viewers na ito po ay isang collaborative advocacy of different academic institutions.
Yes, Martin, MCL, together with 6 other institutions, initiated this campaign, and they are the following: Papua University, Malayan High School of Science, Apex Schools,
Also, University of Caceres, City of Naga, National Teachers College, and Malayan Colleges, Mindanao.
Do not forget to like the official Facebook page of Eleksyon Boto Ko Bukas Ko to stay on top of our voters education campaign efforts such as webinars and other relevant content. Anyway, no-mention ko nga kanina that 7 months na lang ang natitira bago tayo maghalal ng mga bagong government leaders.
Kaya kung napapaisip ka pa hanggang ngayon ng Does My Vote Really Matter? Continue watching as we invited 2 speakers who are going to tackle the importance of voting at kung paano nga ba ang proseso nito.
And aside from that, Martin, lalagyan din natin ng konting kasiyahan mamaya because we prepared a Q&A game for you guys regarding our discussion for today.
But before all of that, let us formally start this program with a few words from MCL's Assistant Vice President for Academic Services, Mr. James Ronald Messina.
Magandang hapon sa mga nanonood sa Facebook Live for the election. So binabati ko yung mga host natin, faculty members, employees, and students, not only of Malayan Colleges Laguna Amapua School, kundi ang mga kabataan sa buong Pilipinas na sabi nga ng mga host natin ay bida para sa election na to. Tayo ay katuwang ng 6 na paaralan at universidad under the iPeople Group, Mapua University Group, na nagpapalaganap ng voter education series for the young Filipinos at pati na rin yung mga not so young Filipinos. So this is not a new project for all of us. As I remember vividly, in year 2008, through the Community Service and Relations Office, we started the voter education program as part of our advocacy for corporate citizenship and also for participative governance. So we want to inform the citizenry of the very important right and responsibility to vote. Kaya nga sa panahon ngayon ng pandemya, napapanahon yung e-leksyon. Pag tinanong natin yung ating mga sarili, ano ba ang E sa mga panahon ngayon? And I can share of one E, which is essential. Essential in English. So marami sa atin ngayon ang hindi lumalabas ng bahay nang walang dalang alkohol. Marami rin sa atin ang hindi mabubuhay ng walang cellphone or walang wifi, o yung iba naman sinasabi walang kape. So ito yung mga bagay na essential para sa atin. And kung i-connecta natin ito doon sa ating palatuntunan para ngayong hapon, ito ay essential na leksyon. So ano ba yung leksyon? Ano ba yung lesson na essential na kailangan nating matutunan sa hapon na ito? And that leads us to answering the question, dahil napapanahon ng eleksyon, ay does my vote really matter? Ang katotohanan niyan ay hindi natin yan masasagot ng madalian sa isang webinar, sapagkat ang tunay na kasagutan sa tanong na yan ay makukuha lamang natin 6 na taon pagkatapos na tayo ay bumoto sa isang pambansang halalan, o 3 taon kung ito ay lokal na halalan. So ibig sabihin, hindi natatapos ang obligasyon, ang responsibilidad at patuloy na pagtatanong ng mga mamamayan kung mahalaga ba ang aking boto at para saan ba ang pagsali sa halalan. So yan yung essential na leksyon na sana ay patuloy nating itanong bilang mga mamamayan, bilang mga Pilipino. Ang kulay ko po ngayon ay hindi tumutugon o hindi kumakatawan sa anumang partido politikal o anumang kandidato. Makikita natin blue and red, pero yan ay kulay ng watawat ng Pilipinas. Ibig sabihin, ang esensyal na leksyon ay dapat laging malakipan ng napaka-importanteng kaisipan na tayo ay bumoboto bilang mga Pilipino. So that is something that I would like to share with our listeners this afternoon. And as I said, that is not a totally new lesson for all of us. And we are very happy that through Malayan Colleges Laguna, Amapua School, and our partners, we are able to continue the sharing of citizenship lessons to the young Filipinos since 2008 up to the present. That's why we are totally committed to continuously educating the young Filipinos, not only about the right to suffrage, but also how do we value our suffrage and our responsibility to vote. So makikita natin lagi sa social media na nagtatanong ang bawat Pilipino, kailangan ko ba talagang bumoto? Dahil yung mga binoto naman ng mga magulang ko, ng mga lolo at lola ko, ay hindi naman umunlad ang Pilipinas. So, sabi ko lagi, dapat tayo magbigay ng tsansa. And ang isa sa mga importanteng tsansa na ibigay natin ay yung boto natin sa darating na halalan. Sabi kanina ni Ms. Morales, yung ating isa sa mga host, 7 buwan na lamang at tayo ay pupunta na uli sa mga presinto. Lagi nating tatandaan na sa araw ng halalan, ang pinakamakapangyarihang persona sa buong Pilipinas ay ang mga mamamayan. Bakit? Sapagkat sa panahong ito, sa araw na ito, ay ihahabilin natin sa mga kandidato ang 6 na taong kapalaran ng ating bansa. Okay? So sana ay lagi nating tatandaan na ang esensyal na leksyon ng halalan ay ang ating pagkaalala bilang mga Pilipino na tayo ay bumoboto para sa kapalaran natin at para sa kapalaran ng ating mga magiging anak. At bilang panghuling esensyal na leksyon, sana pagkatapos ng halalan ay hindi matapos ang ating responsibilidad at ang ating paggigiit sa ating karapatan. Bakit? Kasi pagkatapos ng eleksyon, dapat sundan natin ito, lakipan natin ito ng pagiging mapagmasid, mapagbantay upang ating mapanindigan na yung mga kandidatong inihalal natin ay karapat-dapat at tumupad sa ating sa mga plataforma, sa mga palatuntunan na kanilang ipinresenta ngayong panahon ng kampanya. So malaya kong binubuksan ang pagtalakay ngayong hapon na ito at sana ay hindi lamang sa Facebook matapos ang discussion na ito, sa inyong mga bahay, sa inyong mga virtual classrooms, sa inyong mga chat groups ay pag-usapan natin ang politika na naglalayong hindi pag-away-awayin ang mga mamamayan, ngunit mapagkaisa tayo sa esensyal na leksyon ng halalan. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat at natitiyak ko na yung ating mga invited guests, ang isa sa mga alumni namin, one of our administrators, one of our faculty members, and of course, our friend from COMELEC. At ako po ay nakakatiyak na mapapasigla nila ang diskusyon ngayong hapong ito. Sila po ay ipapakilala later at nangangako po kami na hindi po dito magwawakas ang pagtuntun natin sa eleksyon. Maraming salamat po sa pagdalo and sana po ay maging makabuluhan ang hapong ito.
Thank you very much, Sir James Messina, for gracing us with those words full of wisdom and inspiration. I'm sure our viewers are very excited for this afternoon's webinar, and not only that, but also on the upcoming elections next year. With everything that Mr. James said, I would like to ask you a question, Karen. Saan nga ba dapat tayo bumase sa pipiliin nating candidate?
Martin, para masagot yan, I think our viewers should listen to our first speaker today because she will be tackling topics surrounding the dilemma of choosing the right leaders for our country. At hindi na natin patatagalin pa. Let us already introduce her to our viewers.
She is the Senior Vice President for Administration and Legal of Malayan Colleges Laguna and also the former Vice President for Operations of Mapua University.
Lend your eyes and ears as we welcome our first speaker of the day, Attorney Maria Eloisa Gan.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yes, so this afternoon I will be presenting a short presentation that I put together on Does My Vote Really Matter? Actually, I can answer you right now. The answer is yes, and I'll tell you why. Okay, first slide, please. In answering this question, does my vote really matter? I would like to quote from the late President Ramon Magsaysay, who lived by this. It was a quote that he often made, and it guided his actions, and it is very good advice even today. God created man, and man created government to govern his affairs. Just as man cannot impose his will or supersede the will of God without creating some kind of disorder, neither can or should government impose its will over the good of man as a body, without creating some kind of disorder. Why? Because man, I included a quote from the inaugural speech of President Ramon Magsaysay, the man comprising the people are sovereign. This is enshrined in no less than our Constitution. Next slide, please. Sovereignty resides in the people, and all government authority emanates from them. Not from the government officials, from the people. So there are more than 100 million of us, I'm not sure how many adults, but how do we exercise our sovereignty given that there are so many of us? Well, simple. We cast our votes. And that is why your votes do matter. Take note that when we vote, and we vote thoughtfully and intelligently, there is a good chance that the majority of us will choose from among the candidates the one who is best suited and or most qualified to serve our people. Take note, I'm not saying to lead our people, but to serve our people. We must never lose sight of that. Our officers, our officials, are public servants, most of all. Okay, next slide, please. Now, First of all, I would like to issue this disclaimer that I'm not going to be endorsing any candidate or telling you whom to vote or not vote for. You are all of majority age. You're all highly intelligent. However, admittedly, the electoral process, or the voting process, sometimes gets muddled with certain conflicting emotions. Elections can be a very emotional time. So, some guidelines on the don'ts in selecting a candidate. Don'ts, because this is shorter than the do's, as you will see. So, reasons why we should, these are very flimsy reasons for choosing a president or vice president. Because he or she is cute or beautiful, pogi, funny, parang sarap kasama, sarap kamajong. This one, this is very Filipino. Because he's a relative or she is a relative or a friend, relative of a relative, relative of a friend, friend of a relative, ninong sa kasal. The list goes on. And these may be very good reasons why you would want to invite the person for an afternoon or a day in your company. But that does not give the person the qualifications to lead per se. So if that's the only reason why you're voting for the candidate, look for another reason. Here's another one. Is the son or daughter or parent or spouse of a former official who was very, very good? Sad to say, even if your candidate is the identical twin of that brilliant former official, he or she is not that same official, and no matter how brilliantly that other official rendered his or her service, that does not translate to the son, daughter, parent, or spouse performing just as brilliantly. So if that is the only qualification, please look for something else. Here is an excellent something that has nothing to do with the presidency or the vice presidency. Okay. So, what do I mean by this? Sometimes or many times a person may be excellent as the president of a company, or an actor, or an athlete, and by all means, they should be praised for excelling at what they did. However, these do not yield the qualifications or skills needed to be president or vice president. So again, if that's your only reason, because the person excelled at something else, not related to the presidency or vice presidency, keep looking for another reason. And if there are no reasons other than these to vote for the candidate, select another candidate who will have some of the do's, which will come later. Now, the last one is a tricky question. The candidate promised to. Okay, ito po yung mga campaign promises. And actually, those look like a good reason to vote for your candidate. The candidate promised to do something. However, before you believe the campaign promises of a candidate, you'll have to do a little studying to see if the candidate is in a position to fulfill the promises. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to show a comparison of the three co-equal branches of government. You have the legislative, executive, and the judiciary. Now, note that I place them side by side. There is none that is above the others. Although the president is the one who represents our country when meeting with heads of state, he does not lord it over the other branches of government. They each have their own powers, and these must be respected. This is what is called the separation of powers, and it is guarded very fiercely by the Constitution. So the legislative department is the one that creates, changes, or repeals laws. The executive department, as you will see from the name, executes the law. So it only carries out the law. The president and the vice president cannot make, amend, or repeal laws. There are very limited instances where they can create a pseudo legislative power, but these are specified under the Constitution. And other than these, no, they cannot. So if your president is promising to amend something that is found in a law, chances are he or she cannot do that. Therefore, while there may be other grounds to vote for this candidate, do not believe the promise so quickly. Okay, so that's legislative, executive, judiciary is the one that comes in when there are disagreements on how the law operates or when there are disagreements about differing rights. So again, you have the legislative, executive, and judiciary. We are only voting for the president and the vice president, therefore under the executive department. If your candidate it makes promises that fall under the executive department, he or she will rid the executive department of graft and corruption, then that's certainly something to think about. You might want to look to think more about this candidate. However, if he or she is promising something that falls under the powers of either of the other branches, strike out that campaign promise and look for something else. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this was, well, again, President Magsaysay emphasized the separation of powers, which I talked about earlier. And this has been the practice since as early as 1927, when the Constitution was still called the Organic Law. So it's been around for some time. Next slide, please. Okay, I talked about the don'ts in selecting a candidate. Ano naman po ang mga do's? So how can we select a candidate? Okay, track record and accomplishments relative to administration. That's actually a good way of basing your decision, or a good ground on which to base your decision. However, your job is made, or your task is made a little difficult by the proliferation of well, to use the term fake news, there are entities that want to discredit a candidate. They put the clearly wrong quote and the picture of the person, put it up on Facebook. Ay, ganyan pala si ganyan. So therefore, reading social media posts might not be a good way to check the track record and accomplishment. Check your sources, even broadsheets or newspapers. Sometimes, perhaps without meaning to put out news articles that state wrong facts or inaccurate facts. I find this to be a better way of judging the ability of the candidate. You listen to actual speeches and note the content of what the person is saying. Please don't be affected by a candidate who is funny or appealing. Try to set that aside. Pay attention to the content. Pay particular attention to the campaign promises, as I mentioned earlier. If the candidate is someone who has served in government before, you might want to check the campaign promises vis-a-vis the past performance of the official. Was he or she able to do it? Again, check your sources. Don't just listen to what sabi ng ganito, sabi ng kapitbahay namin, sabi nito. You do your own study, and then you will see for yourself how qualified your candidate is. I would like to refer to something that Professor Messina mentioned earlier. He wore the colors of the Philippine flag in giving his speech, and this is very important. Your loyalty as a voter and as a citizen of the Philippines should be to the people of the Philippines and not to any single Filipino official, no matter how cute or appealing. The elected official, the one we are going to vote for, is not your father or mother or your king or monarch. In fact, probably the best description would be the elected official is your employee. You are tasking this person or giving this person the task of serving the country. And he or she must do so to the best of his or her abilities for the greater good of all. You as the citizens are obligated to obey the law or the implementation of the law, not any particular official. So choose a candidate whose loyalty is to the Filipino people as a nation. Remember that you are not obligated to your officials. On the other hand, they are obligated to you. You are the taxpayers, you provide the funding, they owe it to you to take the tax money and do a good job in serving the Filipino people for the good of all. And if you still have some doubts, sino ba talaga? Next slide, please. These are provisions that have been taken from the Constitution itself. Please note that our public officers have a high standard of accountability. Public office is a public trust. These are very heavy words. They must at all times be accountable to the people. So please don't be led by the saying that because somebody criticized the actions of a public officer, as long as it is a fair comment and it is focused on the work that he does and not because of how the person looks or how the person sounds or how the person is boring or does not dress properly, you can set that aside. But if it is the work that is criticized, where it is not for the good of, or arguably not for the good of the public, that is fair comment. And the public officer is accountable to the people because they must serve us, the people, with utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency, act with patriotism and justice, and lead modest lives. Now, when your employee or the one who is working for you does not deliver, in labor law, there are ways of terminating the employment. The equivalent, if I may call it such, under the Constitution is called an impeachment, and it's not an easy process. And it is limited to certain grounds which are enumerated in the Constitution. So remember, likely whomever you vote for as president, vice president, will be there to stay unless there was a serious breach of the duty, serious enough to warrant the impeachment. Next slide, please. There are also various provisions in the Declaration of Principles and State Policies which may guide you in choosing your candidate. So you might want to look at them. I didn't put them all here, but you can take a look at them. The prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people. If you think your candidate can and will do that, okay, check. Will work for an improved quality of life for all, check. Values dignity of every human person and guarantees full respect for human life. My candidate looks like, or by my judgment, I seem to see that this person respects human life. Okay, my candidate for president or vice president will work for an independent national economy effectively controlled by Filipinos. Check. So these all exist in the Constitution. Shall guarantee equal access to opportunities for public service and prohibit political dynasties as may be defined by law. That is in the Constitution itself, because political dynasties lend themselves to a form of, or some degree of abuse. I'm not saying that it is in all cases. However, there is a tendency toward abuse. Honesty and integrity. If your candidate was once involved in something questionable, kahit na kamag-anak po ninyo, certainly you continue to love your relative, you continue to invite your friends over, but that person might not be qualified to serve the public. Remember also that policy of full public disclosure in all the government transactions is enshrined in the Constitution. And so must the mindset of your candidate be. Now take note, I cannot overemphasize the point that your loyalty must be to the Filipino people. So paano yan? What you mean my loyalty is not to the president or vice president that we elected? Well, if your president and vice president hold supreme the sovereignty of the Filipino people and are as dedicated to the service of the Filipino public as you were in casting your vote, then you're both pointed in the right direction and there should be no problem. So with that, just a quick summary on why your vote matters. Last slide, please. You, the Filipino people, you're one of the Filipino people and you are the sovereign. If most Filipinos vote for a candidate who's not qualified to perform the duties of office, we will just have to bear the consequences of the wrong decision for 3 or 6 years, 3 years if that's a congressman, no? A member of the House of Representatives, or 6 years or more. So consider that this will have effects on not only you, but probably also your children, maybe your grandchildren. There is more than just you involved. Your vote will determine who will serve the Filipino people. And as Karen said earlier, boto ko, hukas ko. We will take that very seriously. Yes, your vote matters. Really, really matters. With that, have a pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Gan, for sharing with us why our vote matters. Grabe, simula pa lang, Martin. It was already an eye-opening presentation kasi di ba nga, she mentioned that according to the Article 2, Section 1 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, in layman's term na lang to, ano, the people, or the authority is held by the people and not those that govern the land, because the Philippines is a democratic state. That is why our vote really does matter. Kahit pa sabihin mo na napakarami naman nating boboto, bakit pa ako makisama dyan, di ba? Parang wala namang mangyayari sa isang boto ko. But you must exercise your right, your authority, di ba, over our land. And so, ayun, it was really just eye-opening. And of course, di ba, hindi ka ba magko-contribute into taking care of your motherland, of your freedom as a Filipino people, di ba?
Yes, Karen. I also like how she reminded us about the qualities of a leader we should vote for. Attorney pointed out factors that we shouldn't consider when choosing a candidate. Yung, for example nga, porket nakakatawa yung candidate, siya na yung boboto mo. Diba? I believe that it is important to take note of these things, as not all first impressions of a candidate will reflect on how they actually serve the people when they get elected. To our viewers, if you have any questions to our speaker, hold on to those because we will be having a Q&A segment on the latter part of our webinar.
But we would also like to know what you guys thought during Attorney Gan's talk. So, Martin, can we read a few comments?
And sige, let's check out the comment section.
Yan, sabi ni Robert Yomoso, go Karen Morales and Martin David Victoria, ingat kayo. Yes, we are taking care of ourselves. Maraming salamat, Robert. Ayan, do we have some more comments?
From Sir Gerald Saavedra, thank you for Sir James daw. Thank you po, Sir James, for your speech earlier.
Yes. All right. Let's move on.
Yes, thank you guys for your insights. Thank you for sharing with us your insights, and we hope that we could continue on having a healthy discussion throughout this program.
For now, we will move on to the next topic that we will be tackling today. Since nalalapit na nga, di ba, ang May 2022 elections, dapat tayo maging handa for it. So our next speaker will be talking about how to vote in the 2022 national elections. Ikaw ba, Martin, do you have any idea regarding this matter kahit na first-time voter ka pa lang din?
Actually, I have little knowledge about the process of voting. I really have few knowledge about it. So I'm very excited as well for our next speaker, so I would know more about the process. Pero mamaya na tayo ulit magchikahan para mapakinggan na natin mula sa ating next speaker kung paano nga ba tayo bumoto.
Yes, eto na nga, to discuss with us this topic, we have the Acting Provincial Election Supervisor of Cavite from the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC.
Here to lay down the process of voting to us, let us welcome Attorney Margaret Joyce Cortez.
Hello, good afternoon. So please present the slide. So may we proceed at slide number 3. Okay, thank you. So first, before we begin, let's have a short activity for those who are watching live here in Facebook. So you may put your answer in the comment. So first, let's ask your quarantine experience. Nung panahon ng community quarantine, next please. Naramdaman niyo ba ang presensya ng mga halal na opisyal sa inyong bawat lugar? Or pasado ba sa inyo ang serbisyo nila? Sa third is, may nagpagtanto o na-realize ba kayo sa karanasan ito? So these are the questions that comes to our mind during this quarantine. Especially, diba, we have already been this quarantine for almost a year na. So more than a year pa nga. So siguro when you have these questions, ano ba nga yung mga sagot sa mga tanong na to? So next slide please. So maaaring ang sagot, ang swerte namin sa aming mayor o kapitan. O maaari naman na maging sagot ng iba, ang malas namin sa aming mayor at kapitan. So this we will see how important those candidates that we have voted during the last election. Next slide, please. So sana bumoto ako, naging maayos ang pagpili ko. So when you look at the projects or the initiatives that your officials have given you, or your barangays or your cities or municipalities, or you will say to yourself ba, iboboto ko uli sila or di na ako magpapaloko sa kanila. Next slide, please. Kahit nagpare-pareho ang posisyon, tandaan natin na iba-iba pa rin ang diskarte at pagganap ng bawat opisyal. So, mabuti na lang at naging mayor at kapitan namin sila. Or, buti pa sana katulad sa kanila ng mayor or kapitan namin. So, maaaring itong mga kasagutan na ito ay isa sa mga kasagutan din ng bawat isa sa inyo. Next slide, please. So, iba ang sinasabi sa ginagawa. Makikita ang tunay na malasakit sa panahon ng pagsubok. So I think everyone will relate to this. During this pandemic, we can see all our officials who have worked hard for us to provide during this pandemic. So napaka-importante ng role ng bawat opisyal natin during this pandemic. So maaaring masasabi natin sa ating mga sarili, ang daming relief, di nila kami pinabayaan. O kaya naman, bakit nung kampanya, galante nila? Bakit ngayon kung kailan kailangan, wala sila? So next slide. So bakit nga ba mahalaga ang eleksyon? Para saan nga ba ang eleksyon? So uno, of course, makakapamili tayo ng mamumuno, patuloy na pagbabago sa bansa, at proteksyon sa mga pang-abusong leader. So this is the importance of why we should vote for this coming election. So especially this coming election, it's very crucial because we are voting for the highest role or position in the country. So we will be voting the president, the vice president, the senators, the congressmen, the mayors that we need to elect for the 2022 elections. So next slide, please. So bakit nga ba ako boboto? Next slide, please. So bakit ako boboto? So sa tanong na ito, maaaring kasagutan nyo ba ay madidisenyo ko ang gobyerno? Mahaharang ko ang di karapat-dapat na nanalo? O makikinabang ako sa mahuhusay na pamalakad ng gobyerno? Or all of the above? So definitely, I think your answer will be all of the above. So you are voting for a leader because you can design the government, or mahaharang ko nga hindi ka dapat manalo at makikinabang ako sa mahusay na pamamalakad. Next slide, please. Next slide. So una, of course, paano mo madidisenyo ang gobyerno? Sa pagboto ba? Sa pamamagitan ng pagboto, madidisenyo mo na ba ang iyong gobyerno? So, ang question natin ngayon, meron bang perpektong kandidato? So, of course, we know, lagi natin sinasabi, nobody's perfect. Walang perpektong kandidato. Pero ano ba yung dapat nating tingnan? So, Attorney Gan has already discussed yung mga do's and don'ts in selecting your candidates. So, next slide, please. So, paano mo madidisenyo ang iyong gobyerno sa pamamagitan ng pagboto? Of course, when we select our candidate who we are going to vote, we look at the platforms they will be presenting during the campaign. So this is a very important to look into. Kasi there are all the issues that that affects our daily lives na magiging focus ng bawat kandidato. So we consider those platforms that we have kung ito ba yung importante para sa atin. So we need to be mindful of all these issues that that affects our lives, and that they will be prioritizing as they go through their government. Next slide, please. So, mahaharang ko ang di karapat-dapat bumoto. So, as already discussed, we are the Filipino people is the sovereign. We the sovereign Filipino people because we have the right to vote. And we need to exercise that right to vote for us to determine who is the most qualified to be the leader of our country. Next slide, please. So, of course, all the projects or nakikita natin, di ba ngayon, during this pandemic, it's very important to look into kung ano ba yung mga nagawa ng ating mga leader. So, if in case during the election, next slide, please. So, of course, there are, when you look into during this pandemic, di ba, there are many responses that have been given to us by our leaders. So we can determine kung sino nga ba yung tumupad sa mga pangako nila during the campaign for the last election at sino ba yung mga hindi. So of course, when we look into and we look back, siya yung binoto ko noon. And ngayon, tatanungin mo yung sarili mo, nagawa niya ba yung mga promises niya sa akin? So if not, of course, we will be looking back, saan ba ako nagkamali nung bumoto ako? So of course, this is, yun yung aming laging sinasabi when we do the voters education, that we should be intelligent voters. As already been discussed by Attorney Gan, hindi pwedeng dahil cute lang yung kandidato, iboboto na natin siya. Or dahil sikat siya, iboboto na natin siya. Because whatever will be the actions of the candidate that we will be voting in the next election, makikinabang tayo sa pamamalakad. At kung hindi man maging maganda ang pamamalakad niya, of course, we'll all be affected. So kaya ang isang boto ay napaka-importante. Next slide, please. So paano ako boboto? So unfortunately, we have only a day left for the registration. So maaari sa inyo ang iba ay nakapagparehistro na. Sana naman nga karamihan sa inyo ay nakapagparehistro na. Because of course, before we can vote for the 2022 national and local election, we need to be a registered voters. So of course, we have the overseas voting. So of course, our OFWs, they also can vote at their country where they are at. Of course, kaya lang po for the national positions lang yon. So of course, we have the local voting and the local absentee voting. So local absentee voting are for those who will be serving during the election, they will be allowed to vote days before the scheduled election. Next slide, please. So again, the last day of our registration will be tomorrow. That's October 30, 2021. So of course, I think all of you know that we have an extension of the registration. So, but hanggang bukas na lang po siya. So for those who have not yet registered, you can go to your local COMELEC office and register. So, but of course, these are the some reminders that we want you to know during the registration. So, para maiwasan po natin na mahaba pa yung pila, you can already download your forms and fill up your forms before you proceed to your local COMELEC offices. Next slide, please. And make sure po na you have completely filled out the forms. So there are different types of registrations. Of course, we have the new or the registration. Ito po yung mga taong hindi pa nakapagparehistro kahit kailan. So there will be the first-time voters. Of course, this transfer of registration naman po, sila po ay yung mga lilipat ng ibang bayan. So for example, I am a registered voter of Batangas and I want to transfer. I am already a resident of Cavite and I will be transferring my registration to Cavite. So we have also reactivation because the voters who failed to vote twice for the 2 consecutive election, their voter registration has been deactivated. So you still need to reactivate your vote for you to be able to vote for the 2022 national election. Of course, you can also ask for a change of the name or correction of entries and inclusion and next slide, please, or reinstatement. So for the forms, we have also the supplementary data. These are for those who are disabled or senior citizen who have assistors during the registration. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just a part of the supplemental data. Of course, we are also, some of the local offices can set their appointment, but yun nga, as I've mentioned kasi, there will be already a last day tomorrow. Next slide, please. So of course, we are also following safety health protocols during the registration. So you, again, download your forms, set an appointment, and then you need to still proceed through your local COMELEC offices. So again, hindi po pwedeng kung saan lang COMELEC office kayo nandoon. Of course, you will be applying for registration at the place where you are a resident of that city or municipality. Next slide, please. Then, when you proceed to your COMELEC offices, they will get your biometrics. So when you say your biometrics, they will get your pictures and then your signatures and your thumbprints. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So ano ang ibig sabihin ng BYOB? So this is just a acronym for bring your own ballpen because what we are experiencing now, diba? So we highly encourage to bring your own ballpen during the registration. So for the question of voter identification, ang gamit ng biometrics, tama or mali? So tama, they're getting your biometrics for your identification during the election. For those who have already voted for the last election, diba, you can experience na titingnan nila or you will be identified by the electoral boards through your pictures. Next is, ilang valid ID ang kailangan ipakita pag magparehistro. So you can only, you need only to present one ID, one valid ID. Of course, it must be with a picture and address where you are residing. So magkano isang set ng application form? Of course, ang application form po ay wala pong bayad. Sa araw ng halalan, may iwan ko ang voter's ID ko, makakaboto ako. Yes, of course po. Hindi po kailangan ng voter's ID para po tayo ay makaboto sa araw ng halalan. And again po, ang COMELEC is no longer printing yung voter's ID po. So if you need voter's identification, you can apply for voter certification in your local COMELEC offices. Hindi ako nakakabasa, kaya di ako pwedeng bumoto. Tama o mali? Of course not. So there's no requirement that you must be illiterate and able for you to vote. So kailangan ko ba ang good moral character para magparehistro? Of course, hindi po. So di na kailangan ng face shield, 'di ba? May mask naman. So I think all of you are already been practicing this during the pandemic that hindi lang po kailangan ng mask but kailangan din po ng face shield when you go to your local COMELEC offices. Next slide, please. So, kailan ba ako boboto? So, our election will be on May 9, 2022. And what you can do ba? So, sabi nga kanina ni Karen, di ba, we only have 7 months to go before the election. Pero it's a longer period pa rin, di ba? So, ano ba yung magagawa mo para during that 7-month period, in order for you to properly choose the candidate you will vote for the 2022 national election. So next slide, please. So we highly encourage you to make your diary. So sa pamamagitan nito, so pagmamasdan mo ang galaw. So ngayon pa lang, 'di ba? Kasi nag-filing na of certificate of candidacy. So you know kung sino na yung mga kandidato natin for the 2022 elections. So you can do is, maging aktibo ako sa mga usapin tungkol sa mga issue. I-follow ko ang mga politiko sa social media. So through that, following your candidates in their social media platforms, considering, di ba, hindi na sila masyado makakapag-conduct ng campaign, unlike before, because of our situation today. So most probably, they will be using social media platforms to have their campaign. So you need to follow them in order for you to know ano pa ba ang kayang ipresenta ng kandidatong ito sa akin. So pagmamasdan ko ang mga gawa at galaw ng mga politiko, ililista ko ang mga gawa at galaw ng politiko na di ko nasang-ayon. Gagawa ako ng online diary para may pamahagi ko ang kaalaman ko. Gagawa ako ng online diary. That's a reiteration of the first. So hindi ako tatanggap ng pera o pangako kapalit ng boto, sisitahin ko ang lahat ng kandidato na lumabag sa mga patakaran at susuriin ko ang mga plataforma at pangako ng kandidato. So this is very important for you to do during the 7-month period, especially you're doing yung online diary. So this may, sabi nga kanina ni Sir James, na it's not for you na para mag-away, but just to inform everyone na ito, ang kandidatong ito yung kaya niyang ipresenta sa atin. O kaya, ito ang karapat-dapat dahil ito yung mga qualifications niya. Or ito namang kandidatong ito ang hindi karapat-dapat because of this. So you can do that for you to be able to have an intelligent decision for the 2022 national election. For the next presentation, please.
All right. Thank you very much, Attorney Margaret Joyce Cortez, for sharing with us the do's and don'ts during the election day. It's important that we were during registering as a voter, and it's really important that we were enlightened by Attorney Cortez this afternoon about the process on how to register as a voter. Kasi nga, diba, bukas na ang last day ng voters registration. And maganda rin na nabanggit niya yung other details like how many times a voter should register at kung ano ba yung conditions that require us to register again.
And Karen, I find it really helpful when she discussed the voting process in detail. She answered out frequently asked questions, which would be very helpful not only to our audience, but most especially to our first-time voters. But for now, while we are waiting for the second presentation of Attorney, let's read some Facebook comments.
Yes, all right. Si Robert Yamoso, sabi niya, it's very refreshing to talk about things that impose a very big impact to us, like responsible voting for #election 2022. I know that we rarely talk about this because of the existing opinions and falsities in the internet. Kaya sana we base din our candidates' information from credible sources. Tama yan. Dahil buong kinabukasan ng bansa ang nakasalalay sa simpleng pagboto natin. Kasi nga, di ba, hashtag, boto ko, bukas ko. Grabe naman the points that Robert mentioned and pointed out, no?
Yes, let's read one more comment before we go back to Attorney Cortez. Finally, a registered voter ready for national elections 2022. Hashtag boto ko, bukas ko, hashtag election 22. Thank you so much for that comment. And we are looking forward to more comments later on this program. But for now, we'll go back to Attorney Cortez for more information about voting.
Okay, so let's proceed for the actual voting process for the 2022 national election. So next slide, please. So of course, we have 63 million registered voter. And remember, ongoing pa po yung ating registration. So it still will increase the number of registered voter for the 2022 national elections. So next slide, please. So this is the number of candidates that we are voting. So of course, the President, 1, Vice President, 1, Senator, 12, Party List, 60, members of the House of Representatives, 243, Governor, 81, Vice Governor, 81, member of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan, 778, and the Mayor, 1,634. For the Vice Mayor, we have also 1,634, and member of the City or Municipal Council, that's 13,542. And of course, sa BARM will still be determined since hindi pa natin alam kung the BARM election will proceed. So look at this number. So ganun po kadami ang ating i-elect na leader ng ating bansa for the 2022 national elections. So next slide please. So this is the expected number of candidates for the 2022 elections. Okay, there will be 18,180 seats, and expected number of COCs to be received is 44,675. So as I mentioned earlier, tapos na po yung filing of COC natin noong October 1 to 8. So next slide. So our election period will be from January 9 to June 8, 2022. So that also be the start of the gun ban. So ito po yung ating election period. For the campaign period, our campaign period for the national positions, for the President, Vice President, Senators, and the party list group, that will be on February 8 to May 7, 2022. So for the local positions naman, the campaign period will be on March 25 to May 7. So that's include the members of the House of Representatives, regional, provincial, city, and municipal officials. So because of the pandemic that we are experiencing, these are the proposed campaign rules for the elective, for the candidates for the election. So next slide. Of course, first, in case of in-person campaign rally, so there will be a maximum of 3 candidates with 10 staff and attendees of not more than 10% of the venue capacity, and only 18 to 64 years old are allowed, with no COVID symptoms or body temperature lower than 37.5. So to ensure that the COVID protocols will be in place, ito po yung mga proposed guidelines. Although the COMELEC has not yet issued a final resolution on this matter, so ito po yung ating makukonsider during the campaign period. So 1 meter or 2 seats apart. Of course, we have the contact tracing and the face mask and face shield, and no refreshment, and there will also be a COVID marshal. So next is, in case of door-to-door campaign, so ito yung tinatawag natin na, di ba, pumupunta sa bawat bahay yung ating mga kandidato. So these are the rules that have been proposed. So maximum of 5 candidates in walkabout and additional 5 walkabout assistants for each candidate. Of course, no contact or handshaking between the walkabout groups and the candidates, and compliance, of course, with the health protocols. Minimum or no physical contact to the voters or the public. Submission of a statement of compliance of health protocols and the candidates need to notify the election officer of the public rally 3 working days prior to the schedule, and they should submit a statement of expenses within 7 days thereafter and submit affidavit of compliance with the health protocols. So next slide, please. Or of course, they are proposing to have the e-rallies and live streams and responsible use of social media. So most probably talaga the candidates will be using social media platforms for their campaign. So next, please. So overseas absentee voting. So for our OFW voters, that will be on April 10 to May 9, 2022. And as I've mentioned, we also have the local absentee voting that will be on April 27 to 29. So you need to file for to be a local absentee voter. That will be on March 7, 2022. That will be the last day to file for local absentee voter application. So this applies for those who will be serving during the election, such as our teachers who serve as the electoral boards, and of course are the policemen who help us during the election. So for May 8 to 9, 2022, there will be a liquor ban. So for the precinct clustering, so when, di ba po, pag bumuboto tayo, we go to our respective precincts. So there will be a limited number of voters per precinct po. That will be a maximum of 800 voters. So if you will compare it for the last election, for the May 2019 elections, ang precinct po natin, for every precinct, there will be 1,000 voters. So ngayon po, because of the pandemic, they lower it to 800 voters per cluster precinct. And of course, the COMELEC have a decongestion of voting centers. So most of the cities or municipalities have transferred into a bigger venue, or there will be 2 to 3 classrooms will be devoted for every cluster precinct. Next slide, please. So these are the health protocols that will be in place during the voting procedure. Of course, you should always wear your face mask and face shield at all times, and you need to bring your pre-accomplished health declaration form. So at the voting center, the BHW or the barangay health workers will be stationed to ensure wearing of face mask and face shield at all times, and collect the pre-accomplished health declaration form and determine whether they have answered yes or no in the health declaration form. Next slide. So they will also conduct the body temperature scanning, and if their temperature is 37.5 degrees Celsius and up, so there will be not allowed to enter in the voting center, or they shall be referred to the medical personnel station in every voting center. So there will also be COVID marshals in the voting centers. The EBs who will serve shall be provided with face masks, face shields, alcohol or disinfectant spray, plastic barriers, and they are preferably fully vaccinated. So we are in the COMELEC, we are mostly vaccinated na po talaga. We are highly encouraged that before the election, we have been fully vaccinated. Next slide, please. So we proceed to the voting process. So of course, when you proceed to your voting center, you will look your name in the precinct computerized voters list posted near the door of the polling place and determine your precinct number and sequence number. So I think there will be a voter's assistant desk naman po for every voting center for you to be able to determine kung ano po ba yung presinto nyo. So it's very important then, di ba, when you registered, you have a slip, you receive a slip from the COMELEC office, and naka-indicate po doon yung inyong precinct number. So it's very important for you to remember that. So para po, during the election, you know kung saan po kayo presinto boboto. Next slide. So the next step pala is approach any member of the electoral board, and the electoral board will verify your identity and check if any of your fingernails already been stained by an indelible ink. So next slide. So after the voter's identity has been established, So the voter will affix his or her signature in the EDCVL or yung election day certified voters list. So dito, di ba? So for those who have already experienced voting during the election, so makikita nyo dito yung, that's why it's important that COMELEC during registration, get your biometrics. Okay, next slide. Next. So after that, the voter will get their ballot. And it's very important for the voter to fully shade the circle behind next to the name of the candidate they would like to vote. Okay, next slide. So not only that you will fully shade the circle, but of course use the pen that will be provided during the election. So yung pong marking pens na nakalagay na doon or have been provided by the COMELEC, yun po ang ating gagamitin sa pagboto. Why it's important for you to fully shade the circles? Kasi maaaring hindi po makount ang inyong boto if it's not properly shaded. So we have what we call undervote or overvote. So undervote, for example, for councilors, we need to vote, for example, 12 councilors, but we only opted to vote for 10 councilors. So if in case you have undervote, the councilors that you have voted, for example, 10 lang yung binoto nyo, so ika-count naman po yun. Although what is required is 12. But for overvote, when the voter has voted for more than the maximum number of votes allowed for a given contest, for example, sa president, you have voted shaded 2 names. So in that case po, your vote will not be counted. So it's very important for the voter to know the difference between the undervote and the overvote. Next slide, please. So after the voter has already accomplish his or her ballot, he will approach the VCM or yung vote counting machine natin to insert his ballot in the entry slot. So the marking pen and folder must be returned to the seat where they voted. So it's very important then to know that it is the voter who will insert his ballot to the VCM. So the VCL will display the message and the ballot will automatically drop inside the ballot box. Next slide, please. So we have the voter receipt, yung tinatawag po nating voter receipt where you will see the candidate that you have voted. So the receipt will be printed, folded in such a way that the contents cannot be seen from the and then it will be cut using the scissors. Okay. So next slide, please. So indelible ink, after you have successfully voted and your ballot has been successfully read by the VCM and the receipt has been printed, so indelible ink will be applied to the voters for fingernail and receipt will be handed over to the voter. So the voter will approach the voter's receipt receptacle near the VCM to verify his or her votes and drop the receipt in the receptacle before leaving the polling place. So it's important din po na yung resibo po or yung tinatawag na voter's receipt ay hindi po ito uuwi ng mga bontante. Kailangan po itong i-drop or ilagay doon sa ating voter receipt receptacle at that will be a black box that will be beside the VCM. So it's very important po na hindi nila iyon iuuwi. Although of course they need to verify first the contents of their receipt before dropping it to the voter receipt receptacle. So okay. So after the voting has already been finished, so ano na bang nangyayari sa mga boto natin? Or yun, di ba, may tinatawag tayo na canvassing. So at the precinct level, di ba, after na voting na po, tapos na yung voting hours natin, at the precinct level, of course, ika-canvas or ika-count na po yung ating mga boto. So we have what we call the Municipal Board of Canvassers or the City Board of Canvassers. Of course, for the national level, we have the National Board of Canvassers, and the provincial level pala, we have the Provincial Board of Canvasser. So the precinct level, ito transmit na yon from the precinct level, ito-transmit na yun to the municipal or city board of canvassers and to the central server. Okay, so after that, ito po yung proseso from the MBOC or the CBOC. It will be transmitted to the PBOC and then to the NBOCs. Okay, next slide, please. So how to report an incident or concern during the voting. So you may file a protest against any irregularity during the voting. So you may obtain, or yung irregularity, you should report it to the electoral board. So yung ating obtain from the BEI, so yung tawag po dati sa mga electoral board natin ay Board of Election Inspectors. But you use it now, or we call them already as electoral boards. So you can obtain, or the complainant can obtain, a certificate as to the filing of such protest and or resolution thereof. Next slide, please. As to the canvassing naman, of course, the canvassers will take note of all the objections, and if in case the parties are not satisfied with that, they can file a complaint before the commission. Okay, so these are the remedies for the losing candidates. They can file a quo warrant to proceedings, or they can file an election protest. So I will no longer discuss this fully. Next slide, please. So term of office. So I think it has already been mentioned earlier. So yun nga po, yung presidente and vice presidente at mga senators natin, they will serve for a period of 6 years. And of course, for our local officials and like the Congress and the mayors, vice mayors, the governors, vice governors, board members, they will serve for a period of 3 years. So when they will assume, so all the winning candidates for the national and local election for the 2022 will assume office on June 30, 2022. Okay, so that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again to Attorney Margaret Joyce Cortez for enlightening us, the first-time voters, as to what the process of voting will be like sa darating na 2022 national elections. And since we are still in a pandemic, even for those na nakaboto na before, it has still been a very helpful talk for them.
It is indeed. Knowing the process of voting is just as important as knowing why our vote matters. And thank you again, Attorney Cortez.
With that, we shall move along, but before we get to the last part of our program, I did say a while ago that we prepared a short Q&A game for you guys. So Martin, ano nga ba ang kailangan gawin ng ating viewers?
Simpleng-simple lang, Karen. They just have to comment their answers here in the comment section of our live stream. They have to comment their answers together with the official hashtag Election2022. Please do take note that we will only count answers with the official hashtag. Now, handa na ba kayong mag-hulalan 2022?
Aba, dapat lang dahil we prepared 5 election-related questions for everyone, and the first one to comment the right answer, along of course with the hashtag, will be declared the winner. So kung ready na kayo, please do comment down below, hashtag boto ko bukas ko, so that we would know when to start the game. So Martin, let us check out the comments.
The comments.
May mga nagko-comment na ba?
Tingnan natin kung meron na magpa-comment ng hashtag boto ko bukas ko.
But I guess they're all ready. Kahit parang kanina pa lang, may mga nagko-comment na ng hashtag boto ko bukas ko. So, dahil mukhang ready na ang lahat, let us start off with the first question, which is, when is the last day of the voters registration? Kanina pa yan nabanggit ni Attorney Cortez. So if you were listening very well, then you would know the answer. At ako rin ata, nabanggit ko kanina yan. So if you can't answer this, yung totoo, nanonood ba talaga kayo?
And let's read the comment section if may makasagot na ng correct answer for this question.
Let us wait for our viewers.
answers with the hashtag alongside the comment.
Yes. Mukhang nahihirapan sila. Ayan. Martin?
From Mr. Robert Yamoso, the answer is October 30, hashtag election 2022. Ayun. Thank you so much, Sir Robert, for answering this question. And indeed, October 30 is the last day for registration of your voter's ID. Please take note that the winners must message the Malayan Colleges Laguna Facebook page with their complete name, email address, and contact number for the prizes. Now, moving on to the next question. What machine does Comelec use to tally votes?
Parang may idea yung iba dyan, pero parang nag-iba na yata. So you guys better fact check the answer that you're thinking of right now para lang sure kayo na tama yung isasagot ninyo. And of course, do not forget to use or to add to your comment our official hashtag, which is hashtag election2022, so that we will be able to honor your answer. Kasi sayang naman, di ba, kung nakasagot kayo kaagad at tama yung sagot nyo, but then wala yung hashtag. So please do be mindful of that.
Again, the question is, what machine does Comelec use to tally votes?
Tingnan natin, Martin, meron na bang nakasagot ng ating second question? Ayan, sabi ni Jasper Ivan Batuin? Or Datuin? VCM daw, hashtag election 2022. Congratulations to you. You are correct. It's VCM or the vote counting machine. Hindi na po ang PCOS machine, which is what we used to use. Ayun, VCM na siya this time. Once again, the winners must message the Malayan Colleges Laguna Facebook page with their complete name along with their email address and contact number so that you guys would be able to claim your prize. Now let's move along to the third question, which is, how many times should a Filipino register to vote for an election? Kanina nabanggit din to ni Attorney Cortez. So you guys better know the answer to this one.
Yes, I believe that Attorney Cortez did mention this alongside with other considerable factors in registering for voting. So, if natatandaan niyo yun, just comment down your answer alongside hashtag election 2022. And Karen, may nakasagot na ba ng ating question? Ayun, from Mr. John Lloyd B. Clarion, 1. Hashtag election 2022. Indeed, you only need to register once because your registration as a Filipino voter is lifetime. You just have to reactivate it kapag naging inactive siya, or you have to reissue it kapag kailangan mo mag-transfer ng yung voter's registration, like for location. Now, moving on to the next question. How many terms does a president serve in the Philippines?
All right, once again, how many terms does a president serve in the Philippines? Nabanggit din to kanina. I think both sina Attorney Gan, diba, and Attorney Cortez ang nakapagbanggit nito. So you guys for sure know the answer. Yeah, let's see. Sino ang unang makakasagot ng tanong na ito? Na tinuturo rin naman sa atin sa school, diba? So, do you guys know the answer?
And again, the question is, how many terms does a president serve in the Philippines?
Ayan na, meron nang nakasagot. Si Miss Elmi Joy Hernandez, sabi niya, 6 daw, hashtag election 2022. Yes, you are correct. A president only serves for a term of 6 years, but then they are still eligible to run for other positions after that. But of course, hindi na nga sila pwede maging presidente ulit. But still, yung pagiging eligible nila to run to another, for another position is up to their situation or depending on their situation. But now, we have the final question, which is, when is the 2022 Philippine national elections? Again, when is the 2022 Philippine national elections? We are looking for the exact date po, so please do write the month, the day, and the year para maging tama ang inyong sagot. At kanina rin nabanggit na ata ito, Martin, no?
Yeah, it's around somewhere in the middle of the year. Just to give
Hmm.
Ayan, guys.
Once again, do not forget to use our official hashtag, which is hashtag election2022, so that we will be able to count your answer. Dahil sayang naman, guys. Ayan, Martin, meron mo
Ayan,
sumagot.
from Miss Rochella Barrinuevo. Hashtag boto ko bukas ko. Hashtag election 2022, May 9. Correct answer is May 9, 2022. Thank you for participating to our game. And that is the correct answer, Miss Rochella. So take note, audience, that our election is on May 9, 2022. Tandaan niyo na, huwag kakalimutan. Thank you very much to
Yes.
our viewers who participated in our short game. The winners must message the Malayan College's Facebook page with their complete name, email address, and contact number. I hope you remember some of the answers to the questions we have mentioned a while ago, lalong-lalo na yung deadline of the voters registration, which is tomorrow, October 30. And of course, kung kailan ang ating susunod na halalan, which is sa darating na May 9, 2022.
Yes, but as Martin just mentioned, no, bukas na nga ang deadline ng voters registration. Kaya naman, please do take the chance because if you have not already registered, since ito na nga ang chance para may exercise natin ng ating right to suffrage. And we hope that you also encourage your family members or friends that haven't yet to do so. And we also hope that this webinar was able to enlighten you and that it was helpful in to let you know why you should exercise your right to vote. All right, speaking of our webinar, no, mabalik tayo to more discussions dahil it is now time for the panel discussion / question and answer portion of this webinar.
For this part, we will be having a set of panel members who will discuss why our educated vote matters. So, for the first panel member, we have the head of the Center for Student Advising of MCL Student Affairs Office, Ms. Christy Amores.
Next up, we have the digital content producer of ABS-CBN Film Productions Incorporated, or the Star Cinema. She graduated as a magna cum laude with a degree of AB Communication, major in Multimedia Arts, back in 2017 at Malayan Colleges Laguna, and was the president of the Supreme Student Council from 2016 to 2017. Let us all welcome Miss Mary Antoinette Lazanas.
And coming back with us are our first two speakers, Attorney Maria Eloy Sigan and Attorney Margaret Joyce Cortez. Now that we have all of our panel members with us, we can start formally with the discussion.
Yes, and to our viewers, now is also the time for your questions to be answered. So please do not hesitate to send them in dahil nandito lang kami ni Martin. Handang basahin yan isa-isa for our speakers to answer later on. But for now, we'll start off na po with our first question for the panel discussion, which is, how can one be an educated voter? Maybe we could start off, Paul, with Miss Amores.
Hello, Karen. Hello, Martin. Good afternoon. Let me just greet first our students from different colleges and universities who are here with us today. Following the COMELEC report last July, 52% of our registered voters are coming from the age group of 18 to 40. And you are part of that age group. Actually, I'm still part of that age group. and with that sheer number, we can say that your vote really matters. Now, as to the question, how to become an educated voter? Becoming an educated voter begins with an appreciation of the value of this exercise in democratic governance. That election is the cornerstone or the very heart of democracy. That if we are to make it work, something that we've been clamoring about, we really have to vote intelligently. Second, we need to recognize this enormous responsibility that rests on us. That if there's one thing that we need to do right as good citizens, it's our exercise of our right to vote. Now, with that, it is important that we equip ourselves with the right information. And that is not much of a problem nowadays, considering that we have greater access to information. But we have to be very critical of the information we find online. I think Miss Tony will have a lot to share about this later. And as mentioned by one of the students earlier, we should be mindful uh, of false information or online materials with dubious sources and dubious content. And joining info education campaigns such as this one would really help sharpen our understanding of this upcoming election and correct some misconceptions about it. So earlier, Attorney Gan and Attorney Cortez had an extensive discussion of what we need to know about the election.
Yes, thank you very much, Miss Amares. Now, who would like to follow up on what Miss Amares has already mentioned?
Do any of our panelists want to add to Ms. Christy Amares' answer?
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon to our audiences as well. I will be focusing on researching candidates' backgrounds since bilang part ng youth natin, syempre masyado tayong kung sino nga bang pipiliin natin. And I believe Attorney Gan and Attorney already mentioned these earlier, and I will be reiterating it lang, yung points na I will be personally doing then ngayong election. There are 3 steps para sa akin dun sa gagawin ko research sa mga candidates. First is defining what you'd want to see in a leader. Second is do your research. And then third is have a fruitful and healthy conversation with other people. So dun sa step 1, first is decide what you are looking for in a candidate. So dalawa lang yun for me, the positions they take on issues and the leader qualities and experiences they would bring in the office. So para po sa akin ay both are important. So when you consider issues, I will think about the community or the national qualities or the national problems that you want people in government to address. So for example po ngayon, napaka-timely may pandemic. Of course, I will be researching about each candidate's pandemic response. Paano po sila nakakontribute sa pag-bounce back ng community, yung mga projects po nila ngayong pandemic. And other examples stands on, kunyari po, lack of education, divorce, same-sex marriage, poverty, unemployment, and such. So, ang gagawin ko po siguro, and ma-advise ko rin po, is magbasa tayo ng articles, manood ng news, mga sagot nila sa interviews regarding these issues, and most importantly, sana po ay manood tayo debates nila. Kasi dito po usually nagkakaalaman ng mga about the issues that really matter. And then second step po for me is do your research. Of course, first is to find out sino-sino nga po ba ang tatakbo. Siyempre, first-time voters, parang ang alam mo lang sa umpisa, yung mga sikat kumbaga, yung mga pero hindi mo alam, meron pa palang ibang candidates. Siyempre, kasama na dito yung local and national elections. So second is collect any information you can find about the candidates. So nasa Amares and nila attorney kanina na mainly social media talaga ang and tayong mga kabataan, tayo yung pinaka-exposed, kumbaga, media and the internet in general. So, pero unang-una sa lahat, kailangan natin ng credible sources, of course. So, do a background check, of course. Of course, importante ang past. Hashtag ungkatan ng past na to dito sa research about the candidates, diba? Yes, our past doesn't define our present image, kumbaga. But it's what made you, you. So, importante talaga ang past. So, first things first, kailangan natin ng credible sources, sabi ko nga kanina. Diba sa thesis nga, Wikipedia, personal blogs, or mga opinion, kailangan natin ng solid facts. Kumbaga, kung tayo'y magba-background check. Lalo na ngayon, nasabi na rin kanina, boom na TikTok, YouTube, Facebook videos, memes, lahat na dito sa election, agad-agad ngayon pa lang. So wala namang masama for me ng mga political video since it opens new perspectives din and minsan nakakawala ng stress, para nakakatawa, mga makakita ng memes. But take it is our responsibility to educate ourselves, our friends, our family members, the people that we care about, na check if the video, check lang, check, kumbaga. Kung yung mga sinasabi ba dito sa videos na to ay totoo. Ingat tayo sa fake news, fake credentials, fake everything lang tayo. Examples of the most important information for me, educational background, experiences in public service, um, and of course, the family background. Never forget. Also learn about endorsements, kung sino-sinong interest or kung ano-anong interest groups or organizations ang nag-endorse ng certain candidate. Kasi it provides clues, diba, to candidate supports. So find out what these groups stand for and find out why they are endorsing such candidate. Kasi dun mo makikita kung tong candidate na ba to ay feeling nila susuporta sa personal interests ng kung ano mang grupo yon. Ayun. Lastly, talk to other people about politics and about the coming elections. Of course, meron tayong sarili-sariling biases, but other people's opinions can help us clarify our own views din. So, niniwala naman po ako doon. And kailangan lang nating maging open for healthy arguments and be teachable, kumbaga. Pag, kunyari, may nalaman natin na may certain information na pinaniniwalaan tapos it turns out na mali pala or fake news and then our friend tries to correct us, parang sana meron lang tayong open mind. Hindi lang tayo nagsistick hindi tayo nagbe-build ng, kumbaga, ng walls dun sa mga beliefs natin. Kasi blind following na yung, diba? Kailangan tumatanggap tayo ng information, lalo na kung based on facts, hindi lang opinion. Kailangan, pwede naman kasi tayong magbago ng opinion pag nag-present sa atin ng fact na, oh my God, tama pala siya. Wala ako, sorry. Kasi diba, hindi naman nakakababa ng pagkatao yan. Actually, mas nakaka-boost nga yan kasi tumatanggap ka ng pagkakamali mo. So, ayun, after natin ma-educate yung sarili natin, friends, family, lalo na yung elderlies, ang pinakamahalaga ay sa pag-contribute ng spreading or educating people tama na fake news na kumakalat. Ayun na po. Sorry, dami.
Add lang natin, Tony, no, Miss Tony. We need also to do a good research on the required competencies for a specific position. Say, for example, sa Congress, may it be district representative or senador, at least they have knowledge of how to make legislations, right?
Yes, thank you very much for those research points that you mentioned a while ago, Ms. Lazanas. Attorney Gan or Attorney Cortez, would you like to add up po sa mga na-mention na kanina na points on how to be an educated voter?
Okay. I will save the best for last, so Attorney Cortez will be last. Because actually one of the things that she mentioned in her talk, which I will leave to her, maganda yung sinabi niya about keeping a campaign diary. Oo nga. Watch the moves of your candidate and see what he's doing. But I will leave Attorney Cortez to expound on that. I would just like to take off from what Tony said. Very, very critical. She said fake anything from fake news to fake educational attainment. Actually, when you think about it, if your candidate can lie about something that sabihin mo, yun lang naman na ano. No, actually, if your candidate can lie about this small matter, how can you trust him or her with big matters, diba? So yes, it is very critical that you look at that even seemingly small lie can actually be magnified when when this tendency is held by the one who's occupying one of the highest posts of the land. I think I understand also what Tony was saying, that you keep an open mind. Okay. And here I will reiterate what I stated earlier and which Professor James Messina mentioned. Your loyalty should be to the Filipino people. so should the loyalty of your candidate be. If your loyalty is to the candidate per se, and then you take the mindset, my candidate can do no wrong. As Attorney Cortez said, there is no perfect candidate. They will all make a mistake, probably unintentionally, well, hopefully unintentionally along the way. But this is no room for idolatry. Uh, Unfortunately, we Filipinos can be a romantic people. We love our idols, and our idols can do no wrong. We do have that tendency. We're a very loving people that way, but it can be dangerous when we don't open our minds to the possibility that our public servant could be doing something wrong. And again, maybe it's something wrong which could be corrected. But yes, keep an open mind. Always focus on loyalty to the Philippines. Uh, and just to expound, research on your candidate, and also do your research on the position for which your candidate is running. This will give you very valuable information, or a valuable mindset with which you can gauge the sincerity of his or her promises. For instance, if you have a candidate for president or vice president who says, I will legalize divorce in this country, you cannot do that because that's not within the powers of you. It's nice to listen to, because these poor women who are, or men who are being battered by the spouse, I'm going to make divorce easier for. Well, that's very good that you want to do that, but perhaps you're running for the wrong position. So if you're trying to attract votes that way, uh, first of all, that casts some kind of doubt on your credibility. Are you really aware of the limits of the position for which you are running? So do your research also. For senator, you can look at because they, unlike the president, na-answer na yung quiz question kanina, no? Only one term for the president. Unlike the president, the senators can serve more than once. Um, you can look at their track record. You can look at what kind of work they did before, and compare that with campaign promises they may have made. Uh, okay, with that, over to you, Attorney Cortez.
Thank you. So again, yon, it's very important for you to have an online diary or even a written diary. So yon, it will take the importance of research. So you will, as mentioned by Miss Tony, you will need to prioritize ano ba yung qualities na hinahanap ko. So that's the first thing you need to determine and research the candidates that you have kung they possess those qualification, and you write it on a diary, and at the time of or at the night before the election you can look back at your diary, tama ba, sino ba dito talaga ang iboboto ko, so you can decide well kung sino ba talaga yung karapat dapat para sa aking boboto. So it's very important for you talaga to research, be mindful of your decision for this 2022 election, because we are appointing or we are electing the highest position in the government. So we have the president and vice president that is very crucial, especially during this time of the pandemic. So we have experienced this. So talaga napaka-importante. Your vote may be one, but it's very important that your vote will be counted for the May 2022 election. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Attorney
very much, panel members. Yes, go ahead, Martin.
Thank you, Attorney Cortez, and thank you, Attorney Jen, for your insights. For the next question, we will be getting a question from our audience via Facebook Live. Here is the question. How do you think the youth can help realign the perspectives of those that are misinformed and spreads false information, while still being respectful of our democratic freedom to choose our candidates? Would any of our panel members want to start off the discussion?
Well, this is a ticklish issue, Martin, no? Well, if you are serious about realigning the perspective of those that you think are misinformed, you have to prepare yourself to engage in a discussion, or let's say argument. And when we engage in an argument, it's important that our goal should be not only to win the argument, but to win the heart of the person we are engaging with. We have to be sure also, um, we should also understand where the person is coming from, because there's a chance we are not sure who really is misinformed. So you yourself should also be open to what the other party has to say. Just like Tony mentioned earlier, be open about, that's what separates an intelligent voter from a fanatic. A fanatic, there's nothing more that he or she can hear or read that will make him or her adore that person less. That person only listens to one side of the story. But if you are an intelligent voter, you should expose yourselves to different information actually, even if that challenges the very thing that you hold on to. You should open to that as well.
May I add lang po, since lagi din naman po ako online, so alam ko yung mga hinanaing ng mga kabataan na ang mainit to ngayon na pagka supporter nitong isa, i-unfriend na lang daw. Parang ganon, unfriend. For me, kung dito nga sa topic na realigning perspectives ng ibang tao or friend natin, for me, wag niyong i-unfriend. Kasi, the more na nakikita nila yung sinishare mo, posts mo regarding kung your kung gusto mo your views, mas makikita niya, hindi masyadong aggressive, kumbaga na naturally niya makikita sa feed niya yung opinion mo, yung mga facts na sinishare mo, diba? Parang kung in-unfriend mo siya, edi lalong na-narrow down yung friends mo sa mga kaparehas ng perspective niya. So, kung ano yung feed niya, para mga perspective niya, yun lang yung makikita niyang information, yun lang yung mag-feed sa kanya, yun lang yung pagbabasihan niya sa magiging decision niya. Unlike kapag nandun ka pa sa friends list, may ibang perspective, may ibang information na nababasa siya sa feed niya. So, feeling ko, ayun. And starting conversation, friends of friends, lalo na sa family members, dito po talaga ako kasi usually pag yung same mga friends mo, workmates, batchmates, parang medyo magkakaparehas na po kayo ng views Pero pag family kasi, iba-iba na ng group. So, iba-iba na po ng mga experiences, paniniwala, and pagkakakilala sa specific na tao, na candidate. So, parang dun po nagkakaroon ng mainit na na usapan. So, ayun, healthy conversation lang and give and take, at saka yun sabi nga po ni Ma'am Amores na understand where they're coming from. Siyempre, nandun naman po lagi tayo sa pag-intindi.
Yes, thank you very much for those wonderful points, Ms. Lazanas. Attorney Gan or Attorney Cortez, would you like to add up po?
Well, I'm way beyond the age of youth already. When you were asking how will the youth realign, I said, wow, is that question for me? I do have kids who are of voting age, though. Yes, probably because I'm no longer young, I also lived during those times, which are often referred to and which are the subject of debate, shall we put it, these days. So we as parents, we try to educate our kids. Okay, not only you believe this because we tell you it's so, but we guide them to good material, not rewritten material, not hyped up material, but okay, here you read these and you make your own decision, and then talk to your peers. And when they have peers who would like to talk to us or have questions, tita, totoo ba na ganito, totoo ba na ganyan, what was it like living under martial law? I was a martial law baby, if you will call it such. And I tell them honestly, okay, it was like this, it was like that. These were the things that were happening. This happened during our time. Okay. Of course, I also tell them, in our time, it was a little bit difficult, more difficult to put out fake news because you couldn't edit things online. Once it's in the newspaper, it's there. So it made revisionism a little bit more difficult. Well, that's it. Be open. Guide the youth to credible material, and encourage them to read and decide for themselves. Just in passing, during one of the recent elections, I overheard a fellow voter behind me telling his son, "Oh, alam mo na kung sino iboboto mo." That was quite sad because I had hoped. I still maintain that whether or not your child will vote the same way you do, that's his or her vote and his or her decision. So we respect that. We as parents, we guide our children. We direct them. Okay, you read, you research. We don't impose our will on them because this is their future.
Yes. How about you, Attorney Cortez? Would you like
So,
to share din po?
yeah, so I think it's very important lang talaga that you are open to a healthy conversation. Otherwise, when you are not, so wala eh, mahirap ma-achieve yung realigning of perspective unless you are open to a healthy discussion, uh, an educated discussion. It's very important nga, again, we go back to research, uh, be intelligent in deciding the things that you need to decide for the election.
Thank you, Attorney Cortez, Attorney Gan, Ms. Amores, and Ms. Lazanas for your insights regarding that question. For now, we will be moving on to the next question, which will be read by Ms. Karen Barang.
Yes, last October 27, a presidential candidate released their statement about vote buying. It may be their intentions or opinion, but I don't think taking the money from a vote buyer isn't right, or it is in the law. What is your advice about vote buying now that it is considered normal in in times of election? The second question, does food drinks are considered vote buy, even a small amount of money? So there are two questions for this one. Who would like to start off? The Attorney Gan or Attorney Cortez po? Since our
Attorney Cortez
commenter
first.
mentioned the law.
Attorney Cortez is the best expert on that.
Okay, so vote buying, of course, it is prohibited. So regardless of whether what is the intention or what will be the end goal for that, basta it pertains to an act of vote buying, it is prohibited under the law. So it may be difficult, really, it's really difficult to prove a complaint or an allegation of vote buying. Napakahirap po talaga niyan. And it very, yung evidence that we can produce, it's very limited. So kaya if you can see yung records of the COMELEC or even of Supreme Court decisions, so napakahirap po talagang i-prove yung vote buying. And as to the second question, regardless of the means, kung ano man siya, it's whether, regardless of the amount, it still be considered as a vote buying.
Thank you, Ms. Cortez. Other panelists, would you like to add on Ms. Cortez's insight?
We're hearing stories no of some voters trying to outwit the vote buyers. They accept the bribe, but they end up not voting for the candidate, right? Some people do that. We hear stories like that. But then, nevertheless, that's wrong. That's wrong. Following what Attorney Cortez said, I think both the vote buyer and the one who accept it will be liable.
Thank you, Ms. Christy Amares. How about Attorney Gan?
Yes. At the end of the day, the only thing that should determine the vote is this and this. The results of your research. Everyone here has been talking about the necessity of doing your research on the candidate and the position and keeping the candidate, the campaign diary. Make your decision based on that. Anything that is given in order to sway a vote toward anything else should not be done. I know I'm being idealistic, but it's a no for me.
How about Ms. Tony Gazanes? Would you like to add anything to the question?
Syempre hindi po ako hindi po talaga dapat ginagawa yung vote buying. But dahil nga tambay talaga ako, actives din po ako nababasa na kapag mahirap nga daw po kasi talaga, parang no choice na kundi tanggapin po yung pera binibigay. And parang hindi na rin naman natin sila masisisi. Para, 'di ba? Pera na yun eh. Pero yun nga, sabi ni Ma'am Amores na meron nga mga stories na tinatanggap pero hindi binoboto. Pero yun ni Ma'am na hindi din siya dapat talaga ginagawa. Pero alam mo yun, hindi siya dapat ginagawa pero hindi mo rin masisisi yung mga tumatanggap. So, medyo ko sa vote buying. Pero kung ikaw naman ay tingin mo ay may kaya ka naman at tatanggap ka ng ganon, parang dun dapat magalit sa sarili mo at doon sa candidate na bumibili ng boto. Pero doon sa mga talagang poorest of the poor, hindi ko po masyadong masasagot kung tama o mali po yung ginawa nila since parang tawag na rin ng pangangailangan talaga.
Yes.
Well, if you choose to be part of that practice, no, then be prepared of the consequences na lang. Do not be surprised if later you find out that the very person who bribed you and you voted would end up siphoning much of the public funds into his pocket or her pocket. Kasi babawi at babawi yan. Babawi niya yung nagastos niya.
Tama po, ma'am. Consequences lang talaga. Pag tumanggap ka, prepare yourself lang. Kasi alam mo na yung kasunod. Babayad ka rin.
100-fold. 10-fold. Bawi yan, 10-fold.
Even until the next generations pa po possible, ano? Ang magbayad for that. But anyway, thank you very much, panel members, for sharing your insights with us regarding vote buying. Let us now move on to the next question, Martin.
But before that, Ms. Karen, we would like to also remind our audience from the Facebook Live that we are still accepting questions through the Facebook page of MCL. For now, let's read the next question, which is from Sir John Clarion. May basic etiquette po ba during election? First time ko po kasing boboto. #election 2022. I believe Ms. Attorney Cortez would be the most appropriate person to answer this question.
Yes. So I think we have already discussed the procedure during the election day. So I think the very etiquette lang siguro is that talaga you bring your heart and soul and your mind to decide on the election day kung sino ba talaga yung iboboto mo. But for the etiquette siguro, ang importante ngayon is the health etiquette during the election day. So I've already discussed it earlier. So yung mga protocols natin that we will be imposing during the day of the election, that we should strictly follow the health protocols kasi regardless of our situation today, we still need to go out and vote. And don't be afraid to vote because COMELEC is imposing or providing strict guidelines for us to be safe during the election day.
Thank you, Ms. Attorney Cortez.
Probably this one is as a the etiquette part of as a mom. Ingat lang po sa selfies, taking selfies during the election. Okay, because you might be taking your own, but there might be somebody seen in that. So, iwas na lang sa selfies during election. And again, this is more as a mom than as a lawyer. Yung mga loud behavior, joking, laughing, keep your voice down. Take that out. Pag pag after na lang, doon kayo go have your good time after voting. But be serious while you're there in the premises.
Siguro if I may add, with respect to the Attorney Gan said about the selfie, so may I remind talaga na hindi po pwedeng mag-selfie, especially with your ballot. Lalo na po kung kita yung sino yung binoto nyo. And of course, yung sinabi namin na voter receipt, So hindi rin po yun pwedeng picturean during the election.
Baka ipakita sa kandidato eh. We're enabling vote buying then. At ano, I think Karen
I
Martin,
voted for you.
I think Karen Martin, no, this is very basic, no? But we common observe this during the election time, no? Do not cut the line. May ganun eh. Basic etiquette, no? Pumila mga tao, 5 o'clock nandyan na. And then, you use your charm or whatever it is that you're using to cut the line, no? So, ano, respeto natin yung mga
Pumila.
perennial problem na to eh, sa mga gantong okasyon.
Would you like to add anything, Miss Tony Rosanas?
Okay na po ako.
Okay. Thank you again to our panelists for answering this question. Indeed, we should carry a proper etiquette when we are voting during the elections. Now, as we move on to the next question, Ms. Karen, would you like to ask the question?
Yes. The next question will be, why do good intentions alone don't equate to a good leader? Who would like to start off po? Maybe
Okay.
Miss Lozana, since she was a student leader.
For me, lahat naman puro good intentions yung ilalabas sa publiko. Wala naman siguro maglalabas good intentions unless, syempre, depende na rin sa opinion ng tao. So, our responsibility as educated voters is, kagaya nga ng kanina pa paulit-ulit na nababanggit, is research about their credentials na dapat, of course, relevant sa position na they are running for. Para malaman natin kung capable ba sila na ma-accomplish yung nasabing intentions, platforms, mga plano na sasabihin nila sa campaign period. Syempre, mahalaga yan. Kasi their past contributions or projects or their background in general speak a lot about how they would be kapag nakaupo na sila. Ayun.
Yes. Thank you very much, Miss Lozanas. Who would like to add up po on what she said?
I have two answers no to that question. Well, it's always good to start with the right intentions, right? Sabi nga nila, may nagsasabi pa nga na we cannot underestimate the power of good intentions. The problem is, good intentions do not necessarily translate to good performance. Good intentions do not necessarily translate to effective outcomes. So for example, a political candidate may have good intentions of, introducing reforms to the justice system or a specific sector, but if he or she is not equipped with knowledge, experience, or expertise to make it happen, specifically the policy requirements, the resources, the what's and the hows, and other considerations, that will not get materialized. Remember, may sinasabi nga si Jeff Bezos na we need good mechanisms to make things happen then. And number two, ang danger kasi dyan, Karen and Martin, the danger lies on the very nature of intention itself. Intention can be fleeting kasi a leader may have started as a hero, no? Somebody with the good intentions for the country, reforms and changes. But a leader, even with the noblest of intentions, without the tenacity or the competence to act on the interests of the people, that leader will falter. The worst thing actually that could happen is, in the absence of clear moral standards to follow, diba? You started with the right intentions, no? But in the absence of clear moral standards to follow, that leader may unwittingly be subjected to manipulative influences, and eventually he or she becomes the monster that she or he swore to destroy from the very start. Di siyang magbago.
Yes, all right. Thank you very much, Ms. Amores. Attorney Gan or Attorney Cortez, would you like to add up po on what they've already mentioned?
I think they pretty much summed it up. Intentions intentions can not only be fleeting, they can be skewed. They can also be subject to qualifications, and they can also be put under pressure. There is a proverb, in fact, that the road to HELL is paved with good intentions, which doesn't mean the good intentions lead you down there. It's just that there were several, there are, it's not enough to have good intentions, because ultimately, what is better for all of us is what the result is. When the result is good, the intentions, nobody's going to nitpick into the intentions anymore. You were able to do your job. But to say that, okay, I intend to serve the Filipino properly, but I don't have the capacity, I don't have the qualifications, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the ability, then the intentions will just remain there.
All right. Thank you very much po, Attorney Gan. Attorney Cortez?
I think sabi na rin naman nila lahat. I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you very much po, our panel members, for answering that question. Let's now move on to some other questions from our viewers. Martin?
Yes, I believe that the next question is specifically asked to our attorney Cortez. Hi po, Attorney Cortez. How do we protect voters who are being threatened to vote a certain candidate during the day of election? Hashtag election 2022. Hashtag boto ko bukas po.
How do you protect a voter who are being threatened to vote to a certain candidate during the day of the election? So I think that the basic thing that you can do, or the basic thing that the voter can do, is to report the incident of threatening. So maaaring mahirap siya, or maaari yung tao takot na meron siya nare-receive na threat na sasabihin, kailangan ako iboto mo, otherwise ganito. But of course, you can always go to someone na you think would be in a better position to report such incident. So maaaring it will be already a case of threat, or maaaring nga grave threat if the threat already involves baka gusto mo mapatayin kita, or gusto mo yung pamilya mo madamay ganito kung hindi mo ako iboto. But otherwise, as I've mentioned earlier din naman, hindi naman nila malalaman kung sino talaga ang binoto mo. So especially, again, we have already devised means that other people will not be able to vote. Kaya nga, di ba, basic, it's a ballot secrecy folder that we use during the process of voting. Kasi it's a very important na gamitin mo yun. Kasi nga, otherwise, your vote will be seen by the other people. Malalaman kung sinong binoto mo. And it's not naman important to others na malaman kung sinong binoto mo, because it's your personal decision. Hindi naman, otherwise, yun nga, malalaman mo na sway ba ako or hindi. It's not that important. So, kaya nga, diba, we have a voter receipt na hindi rin pwedeng adalhin ng botante during the election, iiwanan yun at ihuhulog dun sa voter receipt receptacle, because no other people will be allowed to see your vote. So, I think, kailangan lang talaga you have your paninindigan na ito talaga ang aking pinili at iboboto. Yun lang.
Thank you, Attorney Cortez, for that answer. Would any of our panelists like to add to the question? Again, the question was to how do we protect voters who are being threatened to vote a certain candidate during the day of election?
I think Attorney Cortez answered it.
She said it all
already.
Thank you, thank you again, Attorney Cortez, for your answer to the question. Now we will be moving on to our last question from an audience in Facebook Live as well. Karen, would you like to read?
Yes, from E.G. Lenar, he asked, given the rise of several sources of fake news, do you think that the academe should join the conversation and be a beacon of empirical data based on empirical data-based political socialization? Hashtag boto ko bukas ko. Hashtag election 2022. Ma'am Amaris, what do you think
I
of
think
this?
the academe is actively participating in the discussion. they're already actively participating in the discussion. I see a lot of personalities on TV that are themselves academicians. And as to fake news, well, that's really the problem, Iho. In this age of information, we are really exposed to conflicting information. And as I mentioned earlier, check the sources, check the authors then. Even if he is a columnist or a writer, we have to check the affiliation. We have to read a lot. We have to explore things from different vantage points. Even materials. Sometimes we're afraid to read materials that may challenge our own belief. But then you have to have courage, no, to explore different perspectives on things. Well, fact check, sinabi ni Miss Tony kanina, there are so many ways to do fact checking, no? Just be critical. Be critical in even books. Even books. Well, we can rely on peer-reviewed journal because that has been reviewed before the publication. But as to books, we should be aware of those published in fly-by-night printing press then. So yun, always check everything, the author, the source, and the content.
Thank you very much, Ms. Amaris. Anyone else from our panel members would like to add anything on that? None of all. All right. Thank you very much. With that, we would like to again thank you, our panel members, Miss Christy Amores, Miss Mary Antoinette Lazanas, Attorney Maria Eloisa Gan, and Attorney Margaret Joyce Cortez for sparing us your time and for taking part in our campaign for voters' education.
We certainly wish you all the best in your respective careers and always keep safe. Have a great afternoon.
There we have it. Thank you again to our panel members for gracing us with their wisdom and knowledge this afternoon. I surely learned a lot of things from them, Martin. At hindi lang dun sa ating panel discussion, no? Of course, I also learned a lot all throughout this webinar, especially yung point talaga na we are here to vote as a Filipino, not as a fanatic. Yun talaga yung parang, nag-answer for me nung tanong na, does my vote really matter? Well, yes, because you are a Filipino citizen, diba? That is casting your vote for your generation and the generations coming after you.
Yes, and I agree to what you actually said. It is also actually my favorite highlight for this webinar on the reminder about how we should focus ourselves to the Filipinos rather than the people who we vote for. And aside from that, I'm sure that hindi lang tayo, Karen, ang natuto, pati ang ating mga audience. And I'm sure that we will all use that for the upcoming elections next year on May 9, 2022.
Yes, and now I would like to wrap our discussion up by reminding you all of this. Political leaders, they should be selfless, honest, competent, eloquent, and most especially, they should know how to listen and deliver.
And now that you've learned the importance of being an educated voter, we may not be far from having a selfless, honest, competent, eloquent political leader who also walks the talk.
Let's join hands this coming May 2022 and let our rallying cries for better governance be heard through voting.
Votes have power. Kaya wag kakalimutan, vote with the future of the Philippines and its countrymen in mind.
Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and don't forget to like the official Facebook page of Eleksyon Boto Ko Bukas Ko to be updated on future webinars and relevant information regarding voters' education.
Again, we have been your host. I am Martin Victoria.
And I am Karen Morales, expressing our gratitude for your presence in our webinar entitled, Does My Vote Really Matter? And to answer that, aba oo naman dahil boto ko,
bukas ko. Good afternoon and always keep safe.